Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe. If you dare. Every day at lunch, she would drink roughly half of her Jimmy John's, or whatever, soda, then take it with her to the bathroom to fill it back up with whiskey. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Managers of Reddit, what is the stupidest thing an employee did that forced you to fire them? Number 1. I had an assistant manager who would short the till every single day $3.64. It was always the same amount and we could never prove it was him. Even though it clearly lined up with only his shifts. Day or night. Until one day he came back from lunch at Taco Bell in our parking lot, and my other assistant saw his lunch and thought to herself, that looks good. And walked across the street on her break and ordered the same thing. Her total? $3.64. She immediately came back and told me. I pulled all the drawers and sure enough one was short that exact amount. The kicker. When he was sat down by our DM to be terminated, all they told him was, "We know what you've been stealing." And his response was, "Oh. You finally figured out I was stealing all those Skechers shape-ups." For those that don't remember. Those shoes were $130 a pair. Number 2. A lady I used to work with got fired for doing this. She'd swipe to activate the gift card, charged the customer, then did a switcheroo to give the customer an empty. She was smart enough to go to a different store to use the gift cards, but she was stupid enough to ask for an employee discount, which required filling out a small card with name and employee number. The manager that rang her through, only managers can ring through employees, noticed her huge stack of gift cards and got suspicious, so she called our store, which had been dealing with customers claiming their gift cards not working. Put 2 and 2 together, and she got fired. Number 3. New guy, around 20 years old or so, called in sick saying he thinks he had a stroke. Since he lived across the street from the store where we worked, we all then stood and watched through the store's glass door as he packed up his truck with beach gear and drove off with his girlfriend. Fired the next day. Number 4. Girl decides to start stealing some of our products from the warehouse and sell them on eBay. As brand new, with factory warranty. It only took a couple of weeks before we started getting calls for tech support for products with serial numbers we did not have registered as sold in the system. Brief investigation leads straight to her. She is fired, of course, and legal action pursued, but the sad angle to the story is that her father worked there too, and we were forced to make him stay at home with no pay until it could be determined beyond any doubt that he wasn't involved. Number 5. Offered a job to a candidate, but had to step out of the office to grab some paperwork. Came back and a bus pass that was on the desk was missing. Newly hired employee stole it. I asked him to return it because a previous candidate dropped it and he said he needed it more than they did and walked out. Number 6. One of my employees broke into my locked office with a customer, and went through the cabinet with all of the employee files. Said files contained contracts, personal info, like SSNs, and a picture of the employee in uniform for our records. When I went through the footage W/audio to find out why my office was unlocked, I heard him talking to the female customer about how one of our other employees was a great guy and she should totally hook up with him. The reason he broke into the cabinet with all of the sensitive info was to find the employee pictures, because the guy wasn't on Facebook, and the female customer wanted to see what he looked like before she made a decision about effing him. Number 7. One day at an old job, we got a call from a customer complaining that her credit card statement didn't match her receipt. It was $5 over. We got another call later that day saying the same thing. Later on, a dude walked in to complain. Same thing. 2 more people came in later. Their waiter had added $5 to each of their tips. They were all at the same table. Idiot. He was fired on the spot, rightfully. And the customers got hella gift certificates. Since I seem to be inspiring logic problems here. This was a table of 5 people all sitting together at lunch for a work meeting. They noticed the discrepancies when the first woman's itemized receipts didn't match up to what they said they had spent, and she asked her colleagues if it was the same for them. Number 8. He stole a bunch of bananas. Seriously. It was a college dining hall. He was an employee of the dining hall, and got free meals while on shift. He was not working that day, walked into the serving area, hid a bunch of bananas in his bag, and tried to pass the cashier, only paying for what was on his tray. When confronted and asked if he had forgotten anything, maybe in his bag, he denied having anything else. Fired on the spot. The worst part, he was on a meal plan, a kind of debit system. Except you never get the money back at the end of the semester if you don't spend it. He had plenty of money for the semester. I have no idea why he felt the need to steal bananas. Number 9. He got out of jail after being in the work release program for a few months. I didn't know how bad he was addicted to heroin until that day. I walked in and there was blood everywhere. He was nearly passed out and I could see about 8 morphine patches, a few on each arm. He had cut a huge chunk out of his finger trying to slice a block of cheese. Being the manager, I had to take him to the hospital to get him out of my restaurant. Obviously, when he showed up to work the next day, I let him go. He seemed really surprised that he'd get fired for such a thing. He's dead now. He overdosed last year. Number 10. Back in my days working at a used car dealership, we had a teen come in and test drive a 1,500-mile Corvette. Today's equivalent would be the ZR1. Anyway, the kid drives it around our set loop once, and is being a little waffly on if he wants to get it or not. He says it doesn't really drive as well as he thought it would. My salesman told him it was a user error, and he'd prove it to him. They went out for another loop around, with the employee driving it. He managed to get pulled over doing 135 miles per hour in a school zone, got arrested if I recall correctly. Needless to say, he was not welcome back at our store, however the teen did buy the car. Number 11. I was assistant manager at a restaurant for a while and one of the newer bussers had called in 3 times in his first 2 weeks. He called in on Saturday telling me he was deathly sick and couldn't even get out of bed. Around 9 p.m. after the dinner rush, one of my servers asked me to go check on table 42. I turn the corner and there is the sick busser stoned out of his mind with 2 buddies eating. Number 12. Oh man, I miss my remote gig. The company was in Ohio and hired me as a staff August in Minnesota. Once a month they'd pay to fly me out there, put me up in a nice hotel, and pay for all my food. No joke, I gained 30 pounds with all the candy and expensive steaks. I took a vacation with my family at one point. As long as I put in my 8 hours a day, I could be on the beach with my laptop and no one cared. Then axed my position once they realized how much they were spending and hired someone in state. Number 13. Had an employee, male around 22 years old, blatantly and apparently with some force, grab and jiggle the breasts of a 16-year-old female employee. He did not speak English and used fairly obscene hand gestures to convey his defense. His reason for fondling a teenager? Her breasts were very large and he couldn't believe it. Number 14. Every day at lunch, she would drink roughly half of her Jimmy John's, or whatever, soda, then take it with her to the bathroom to fill it back up with whiskey. She did a pretty good job covering up the smell, and since she did it from day one, it wasn't immediately obvious that she was getting drunk. Found out on day 4 when she knocked her full cup over, and we all got punched with the smell of booze in the afternoon. Number 15. Guy hired to manage a store in a mall refused to park in employee parking. As I'm sure everyone knows, mall employees have designated parking places, far from the choice spots near mall entrances. This guy refused to park there, and every time he parked illegally, the store got fined $100. And he parked in customer parking every damn day. He was called out on it, the policy was explained over and over. He got written up. He was told that on the next infraction he would be fired. And he did it the very next day. Was totally blindsided when we actually fired him. Number 16. Hired a girl to work in a bagel store, who on her first day told me she couldn't touch any of the meats because she was vegan. Had another guy show up for work his first day, was doing just fine, seemed to be good with the job. I went to the office to get some paperwork for him to fill out, and he was just gone. Never came back, didn't steal anything, no explanation at all. The bad one had to fire a girl for not showing up for several days in a row, and saw in a newspaper the next week that she had been in jail the whole time because she had locked her kids in a closet while she was buying coke. Number 17. I'm the assistant manager, but I just have to let this story go. Hired a cashier to help with shifts and give me days off. After about a week, the big boss and I noticed that our lottery tickets were off, and one was even F up, crinkly, scrape torn. So obviously she has to go through our security tapes with management to find out the problem. So a bit of backstory before the next bit. The guy's boyfriend at the time used to have my job, and back then the cameras were positioned differently. When he left, my boss had them moved to eliminate blind spots. So when Big Boss and Bigger Boss opened up the tapes, they found this smart guy casually dropping large stacks of lottery tickets, and then kicking them over to spots of the cashier area that used to be blind spots. Not only did he get caught doing this, But because of the exact positioning of where he thought the blind spot was, his boyfriend was charged too. Needless to say, he was fired immediately. Oh, and every ticket stolen is counted as a felony. Each ticket. Number 18. Managed a long-term care facility. Got a call one night from a resident telling me that the new nighttime worker was acting weird. This was about midnight and the shift started at 11. I called my lead, there were 3 people on duty, and asked how the night was going. She told me that Sally was sick. I put on my shoes and headed in. Now having the administrator show up at almost 1 a.m. is never a good thing, so I'm pretty sure all 3 of them felt scared when I showed up. I took one look at Sally leaning against the wall, and asked her to come into my office. I asked her if she had been drinking. I never drink at work, she slurred at me. I told her I had to have her blow into this tube. We had breathalyzer tubes that registered if they were over a specific level. The crystals changed from clear to dark blue if the alcohol registered over the legal limit. No surprise. Turned dark blue. I asked her again if she had been drinking. She admitted to having been drinking earlier in the evening. She and her friend had been doing shots up until about 10 p.m. But I'm not drunk. I stopped and ate almost 2 hours ago, so it's all out of my system. Nope. Doesn't work that way. Sorry Sally, but I need to let you go. Call someone to come get you. I told her as I was filling out paperwork for the breathalyzer usage and final check request. Oh, that's okay, I drove in. Nope. She then asked what time she should come in tomorrow. Sally, you no longer work here? Coming to work intoxicated is not tolerated. Oh. Really? Yes. Really. Please call someone, who has not been drinking, to come get you. She called about 16 hours later asking me for her next week's schedule. She didn't remember being at work and getting fired. Number 19. This actually happened at my current place. We had a secretary, we were all curious as to what she really did during the day since it seemed like nothing got done. I ended up giving her lists to complete, but she would throw them in the trash. I got fed up and looked at her computer at the end of the day. Which was probably shitty on my part. Found out she was prostituting herself with her company email. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.